in a military sense now that we have become the target. This is the moment to turn, to really get the rest of the world to confront its responsibilities vis-a-vis terrorism and to take and to support our action.
Other than the battle against terrorism, does this change anything else in terms of the realm of their areas that you focus on as a columnist?
We don't know yet, but I think it very well could. I mean, this is, I think, one of those moments when history swings on its hinges, and if we take advantage of it to really focus on the need for a new national security strategy, then we are looking at significant changes in that part of American life. I think it's very important, of course, to continue to live as Americans, to live in a free society with all that that means. But I think Americans are, in this moment, prepared to put up with some inconveniences, with some changes in perhaps the way we look at military force, the way we use military force abroad, and what we're prepared to do to make that possible. I think it is a historic moment.
But to seize the moment, you have to do something that says you're not going to win this, and we are not going to allow, we being whoever is attacked, we're not going to allow you to change us because of the actions you take. I mean, the President spoke to that, and other people have spoken to that.
And
yes?
I can't put it any better than that. I think that's exactly right. I think you have to make it clear that we have finally understood this is a long-term struggle. We're not going to, simply by getting Osama bin Laden, simply by getting Afghanistan to close down those camps, if that happens, or perhaps we are required to close them down for them. Simply doing those things doesn't end this. This is a long 10-year, 20-year struggle that we have to commit ourselves to.
Do you sense that the Egyptians specifically are prepared to support this because of their own problems with terrorism?
I think they are, certainly their own history will incline them to do this, but it's not going to be easy. There are a lot of conflicting pressures here, and that is precisely why the question of American leadership, of making it very clear that there's no room not to join us, not to support us, and still be protected by the United States, still really to be a friend of the United States. I think that's why that's so important. They don't any longer have a choice of standing on the sidelines when it comes to America's war against the terrorists.
What's the danger and the risk for the administration as it considers all these actions?
When you move to significantly change the world's contours, as it were, the political contours, you're going to run big risk. We no longer have a choice of not doing that. We have to take the risk of Arab governments not being able to withstand the pressures that this will create. I think, by and large, in the Middle East in particular, once America strongly establishes its leadership position, as it did in 1990, 1991, and going into the Gulf War, and at the same time shows a determination to help bring about a lasting peace. Remember, the Bush administration, the first Bush administration, immediately convened the Madrid Peace Conference, which led to Oslo, along with the Gulf War. You've got to do both those things. You've got to be very strong in doing them both, and very clear.
And be very clear that as you do this, in a sense that you're willing to risk lives for the mission that you are articulating. At the same time, with the other hand, you want to let those know, those other, firstly, Middle Eastern countries know that you are sensitive to what they have, that their own grievance.
That's right. Charlie, September 11th, 2001 demonstrated that we risk American lives and American interests by doing nothing also, by not doing what we should have been doing in the first place. We no longer have a choice of taking no risk. We take risks because we are the United States, because we are involved in the world, and I don't think any of us would want to walk away from that.
And not to lead is to encourage others to take advantage of you.
That's right.
Jim, thank you very much.
Charlie, thank you.
Jim Hoagland, columnist for the Washington Post. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Joining me now from Boston, New York Times columnist Anthony Lewis. Also here, author David Halberstam, and Frank Rich, who also writes a column for the New York Times. I'm pleased to have them here to give a kind of sense of how they feel and see and what has impressed them and what has questions they might have about the tragedy that began yesterday at 8:45 a.m. I'll start in Boston with Tony Lewis. Tony, when you look at this, tell me your feelings and impressions and sense of perspective on this tragedy.
Well, here on the second day, I still think the most important thing we need to do in the world is to gather what Secretary of State Powell put very well, a worldwide coalition, a worldwide effort to build a coalition against terrorism. It's terribly important for us not to be alone, but to make this an international effort. I thought Powell put it really wonderfully in a way that the President has not. Then the other thing that is worrying is the sense that we may be taking steps against civil liberties. Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld suggested today that we need to do more to protect classified information. That's always the sort of knee-jerk reaction of people. More secrecy will save us, and to the contrary, it will hurt us, not save us.
Frank?
Well, I share Tony's view, obviously, that we have to try to build a coalition, and his hope that the Secretary of State is doing that. It's certainly the news, such as it is, coming out of Washington, suggests that is what is going on, and the President, however inarticulately, is trying to say, let's be patient and let it happen. Another thing that has impressed me over the past 2 days is New York City. I mean, just the resilience of many people in the city in the face of an incredible tragedy, starting with the mayor of New York, I might add, who I feel has done an extraordinary job over the past 2 days in a way that I wish the President had for the country.
I'm struck by that too, David, aren't you? Mayor Giuliani has clearly been.
And I think in a number of ways, I think, for instance, I mean, the humanity, I mean, obviously very affected by it, but I think in also trying to tamper down any easy jingoism on locale towards Arab groups or anything. It's, when he's good, he's really good. When he's bad, he's really, I thought he was wonderful. The sense of the city, you know, it's a new era. This is, Tony and I are both old enough to remember Pearl Harbor, and this is sort of, I think the idea that there is parallels with Pearl Harbor are really right. I think it is a new chapter. It is a declaration of war when you take 3 planes and turn them into missiles. I mean, a terrorist group that has no air power, no air force, suddenly had an air force. And as such, what is at stake, it seems to me, is the very concept of the open society which we are. So much freedom. If you've worked in totalitarian countries like I am, you go to check into a hotel or get on a plane, and you have to bring about 20 documents to prove that we are so quick and impatient and democratic, and so much is at stake that we have this easy access, and that is being challenged by a very, very small handful of people. And, you know, we need to be both strong and hold on, if we can, to those freedoms. It's going to be a real challenge.
Richard Holbrooke made this point last night on this program, that this is really...
You had Holbrooke on before us.
We're all out of here. How could that have possibly happened?
Because we were talking about the coalition building. Here is the notion, is that this really is a security issue. I mean, the coalition building is obvious. NATO had some actions about that today, saying that if, in fact, it was determined that foreign nationals, they would consider a declaration against everybody, membership of NATO. But it is a security issue. Tony makes the point about the threshold of civil liberties, but I assume that we will see considerably more security at airports as a result.
And everywhere. I mean, we're all so used to...
Not just airports.
I mean, today we were told not to mail letters in mailboxes in New York City, just to go to post offices. Another thing, though, that I want to bring up in relation to what David said, for all the similarities to Pearl Harbor, there's one spectacular difference sort of at the ground level of the citizen, which is we don't yet have a clear face on who the enemy is or what the point is. And I think that sows a certain kind of confusion and terror, maybe beyond Pearl Harbor, not having lived through it. And it's another reason why the mayor's work has been so great in trying to stop any kind of witch hunt against certain ethnic groups or whatever until we know what the hell is going on.
Again, Charlie, if I may, Again, that's where you should be looking. I think we should be looking for leadership from President Bush. It's very important to tell the country that we need not be, we should not be hysterical, we shouldn't pick on any group. Giuliani was wonderful. I saw him on television today, and I just thought that was terrific, and I look for that from the national leadership. We haven't had it yet.
I think it's, by the way, much more than a security issue. I think it's really about the very nature of the society. I think that we have been on a binge in this society of sort of self-absorption. We are a monopoly superpower. We're the most powerful nation in the world, but if you look at our most powerful media, it's, I think, effectively isolationist. It's been cutting down on foreign correspondence. The most highly rewarded people in your world of television are people who do trivial celebrity reporting, as if we can be this great power with extraordinary influence and not pay attention to the rest of the world. And I think it's a very serious judgment out there. I mean, not that if we had had more foreign coverage or paid more attention, this might not have happened, but we would be a smarter, wiser, much better focused country as to what the world is like,
well,
why
David,
there are.
Yeah, but David, we turned off the rest of the world after the fall of the Soviet Union.
Yes,
Communism
that's
was
very
dead.
Specifically what I'm talking about, that after the Soviet Union, as if, well, the oceans, the ponds, the oceans which became ponds are oceans again, and we don't need to think about it. We're safe.
Nothing to worry about.
And this, in fact, shows clearly our vulnerability.
Yeah.
Yes, it's it's a different kind of danger. It's a very complicated one. It's sometimes more insidious, but it's a very real world. And the fact that you are rich and powerful does not make a lot of people in the world like you. It makes you a target.
Charlie,
yes,
you used a word a little while ago that I think is important in a way beyond the way it's been used, patience. Americans are extremely impatient people. You go to other countries, you realize how much more people are reflective, prepared to wait, think, consider. We rush onto planes. We're going to have to change that. There's not going to be any rushing onto planes. There's going to be much less rushing in general. And we're going to have to be, whether we like it or not, we're just going to have to be more patient.
But that's going to take leadership to achieve, because we are in this society right now, and a lot of it's driven by the media, where we always want instant results. We always, there's shark attacks, and we're going to deal with it in 10 minutes and then go on to the next thing.
But do you think part of this is because of the intensity of coverage of an event like this, or even the shark attacks? I mean, all weekend when you had the shark attacks.
We don't differentiate between shark attacks.
May I suggest that Connie Chung's big super interview with Condit doesn't seem quite as important, and it's quite an important media event. The Lewinsky story. I mean, so many things that starting in the cable world, but feeding into the prime time of primetime magazines and news shows. I mean, this binge of celebrity stuff, that comes from somewhere. If you do that, you're not doing something else. And we've been on a very trivial agenda, and you have to reorient yourself to what matters.
Okay, but David, let me ask this. I mean, all of us here and in Boston love, international affairs and the study of and the whole geopolitical considerations. But let's assume we had lots of reporting. What difference would it have made in terms of the desire by someone to lash out against the United States?
No, it doesn't change that ability to lash out. It gives you a longer attention span, a better sense of what the world is, of how to put your resources. It upgrades the people in government who pay attention to this, as opposed to downgrading them, which is what we've been doing.
I want to talk a moment, Tony, about, you raised it a couple of times, presidential leadership. I mean, it was, in fact, after Oklahoma City that I think President Clinton gained some footing in terms of the way he handled that. What's the challenge for President Bush?
The challenge,
first, come back.
I think the challenge fundamentally is for people to look to him as a wise, stable guide in this very difficult situation. And I have to say, I'm not a fan of George W. Bush. I wouldn't criticize him in this situation, not at all. But I think I could say carefully that nothing he has said so far gave anybody the feeling of unifying power and support of yesterday, December 7, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. Now, everybody who heard that was ready to rush out to the barricades and fight for this country. Now, there's been nothing like that, and I don't know whether he's capable of it.
And he doesn't have to go to Clintonian excess, but 4 minutes, frankly, is not enough for an address to the nation, and